Hello and welcome to Sunday. As you can see, I have the star of our show right behind me. I know he's not often here in the videos, but he is with me every night when I'm writing, and he's looking out the window at the possums and the raccoons and having an absolutely lovely time. So yes, he's still very, very, very much here and very, very, very much in the books. So yeah, he has not been forgotten. So I just want to let everybody know that. So we have a bit of story time after this next chapter, and so the next chapter is chapter 43, Shillelagh time, and I'm going to read just a little bit of chapter 42 and get us going. Whoops, easy there, Bubba. All right, so as we remember, we have the Ken's school in from Cincinnati, and they're here to have their exchange of reconciliation. And we fought the first two rows, and that was a party. We fought the last two rows, and that was much more of they're going to be a pain in the butt. But anyway, they got through them, and so now it's time for the heads of the two schools, Sandy and Ken, to fight, or at least had their match. So they've had their introduction, and so here we go. It wasn't the best speech, but it was the most real, and everybody cheered and clapped. Sandy gave their side a wave and a bow. We got a wave too, but she also added a wink. Sandy was clearly very excited about her match. Tyler brought them to the center and gave them his short talk about having a good fight. Then he sent them back to their sides. The room got quiet. This was it. This was the big matchup. If Ken won his fight, he'd show his school was something to be reckoned with. If Sandy pulled out all the stops and barbecued him, it would look like House Louisville was the bully of the area. Sandy needed to win, either in a traditional way or find a way to lose gracefully. Fight, Tyler announced and stepped back. The match was on. Chapter 43, Shillelagh time. Ken went first, swirling his arms like he was in a kung fu movie, trying to gather his chi. A fireball formed in front of him, and the more he swirled, the bigger it became. Finally, when it was about 3 foot wide, he flung his hands at Sandy and sent it on its way. It shot across the ring and slammed into her charm shield. Her shield remained intact, although it did force her back a step. Ken then assumed a fancy kung fu pose, like he would have if it was, and it looked. Ken then assumed a fancy kung fu pose that looked like it would have one of those names like Praying Mantis Spanx Monkey. He was obviously waiting for her to attack. "What the hell's going on?" I asked Annabeth softly. "I thought they were going to fight." "I think he wants to do some sort of polite fighting," she whispered back. "Maybe it's like the old days when they would take turns shooting at each other." I shrugged and went back to watching the fight. Sandy stepped forward and bowed to Ken, acknowledging his hit. Then she casually formed a fireball of her own and sent it back to him. She didn't do his whole arm swirly thing, but she did make the ball of fire a bit denser than his. It smacked into his shield and knocked him back 2 steps. Ken's performance looked better, but Sandy's had more impact. I'd seen her fight, so I knew she wasn't even trying. Ken bowed, acknowledging her hit, then swirled his arms and tried again. This time the fireball he made was a bit smaller and denser. I paid close attention to his movements to see if they actually helped his magic form into being, but it didn't look like it. It was impressive, and I'm sure it made him feel better, but that seemed to be the extent of it. Sandy's shield took the hit, but this time she didn't budge. She bowed, and then hit back. This time her fireball was only about the size of a baseball, but it looked intense. It smacked into his charm shield and knocked him all the way back to the wall. Ken didn't look happy about that as he walked forward and resumed his spot. This time, he really swirled his arms, and he looked like he was trying to summon the heavens and the earth. A fireball formed in front of him that was about the size of a basketball. He kept swirling and adding his power. Then his movements got smaller, and the size of the fireball shrank a bit. It still wasn't baseball-sized, but it was close. Ken was giving a great performance, and it seemed like he threw everything he had into his creation. Finally, he launched the ball at Sandy. It hit her shield, and it looked like it knocked her back into the wall as well. We were behind her, though, so we could clearly see she'd already started stepping back as soon as the fireball got close. "She's letting him save face," Annabeth whispered. "Agreed," I nodded. "This whole tit-for-tat thing seems strange, but it's not bad. Sandy's letting him set the pace of the fight, and in exchange, she can better control how much power she uses. She should be able to win, but still let him have his moments to shine." Sandy put her arms behind her, stepped forward, and gave a deep bow. She looked like one of those wise, mystical monks you see in the movies. I think Ken thought he'd really shown her how it was done, as he got a big smile and bowed deeply in return. Sandy then looked at the floor, and a small round rock levitated into the air. It was slightly smaller than a pea, and if she hadn't been looking at it, it's likely nobody would have noticed. I grabbed Annabeth's hand and squeezed in excitement. Shit was about to get real. Still not moving, she looked at Ken, smiled, and then the tiny rock flew across the room and smacked into his shield. It hit with a loud thwack, and for a moment Ken just looked confused. Then Sandy burned the rock, and even through the walls of the ring, it felt like she'd opened the doors to a blast furnace. It only lasted a second, as the rock wasn't very big, but it was enough to fry the crap out of him. His clothes started smoking, and for a moment I thought they were going to catch fire. The worst part was his hair. His eyebrows were now ash, and the hair on the front side of his head was singed. He looked at her in shock as curls of smoke wafted off the top of his head. He looked like something out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and I had to bite my lip hard to keep from laughing. Sandy bowed to him again, and then turned around to give him a moment to put himself together. "Oops," she mouthed at us and grimaced. "Somebody should tell Ken that's what happens when you play with fire," Annabeth said. She looked like she was trying hard not to laugh too. It took Ken a moment to make sure his clothes were okay, and he rubbed off the burnt hair. The smell was strong and bitter, but I'm sure it was much worse where he was. He looked sad and dismayed as he pulled out clumps of toasted hair, but the match wasn't over yet, so nobody could enter the ring to help him. Finally, he got himself together, bowed at Sandy, and started another summoning. This time he created a force bolt, which I'm sure seemed like a much safer choice. He looked angry, and his bolt had lots of power as it zipped across the ring and smacked into Sandy's shield. This time she wasn't playing as it knocked her back into the wall. Her charm shield held up, so she was fine, a bit shaken, but fine. I'd seen Sandy throw a heavy sand opponent out of the arena, so I knew she wasn't lacking in the force department either. I was very surprised, though, when she started drawing my old-fashioned force rune in the air. She went with the original version we'd found at Biddy's and didn't add any accent lines. This was new, and I was excited to see how it would turn out. Once it was done, Sandy paused in concentration and then smacked up through the rune like she was trying to smack a ball into the air. In this case, her ball was Ken, and he shot off his feet and slammed into the ceiling high overhead. It happened so fast, he barely had time to scream, but he did a lot of that on the way back down again. He crashed into the ground face first, and he would have been in for a world of hurt, except his charm shield took the brunt of the fall. That was the last thing it did, though. His shield popped as his charm was now out of juice. It still stunned him a bit, though, and it took him a moment to get to his feet. Once again, Sandy looked back at us and mouthed, "Oops." "It looks like casting through a rune really works," Annabeth said. "It looks like it," I replied happily. I don't think Sandy was expecting that big of a reaction, but it just proves what Biddy told us is real. It takes a while to draw the rune, so I'm not sure that technique is useful in a real battle, but it's nice to know the concept is sound. Ken got back to his feet, and I guess he decided it was time to move to the weapons part of the match. He summoned his personal shield and then summoned his staff. Both of them looked pretty good. They had a nice amount of detail and held a good amount of magic. I stopped and then looked again. I realized I was getting a bit jaded, as his weapon and personal shield were more than just good. They were the best I'd seen today, by a lot. I had mentally compared him to the craftsman from the gathering, but that wasn't really fair. While he was doing that, Sandy summoned her own weapons. She held out her hand, concentrated, and formed the skin of the shillelagh. It looked transparent, like she was forming a hologram, but then she slowly filled up with magic and it turned solid. She obviously needed to work on the speed at which she formed her weapons, but the results were fantastic. The shillelagh had all the real-world charm of the original, including the dings and chips of having been used in a fight already. It had little knots from the wood, and I could even see the wood grain in spots. I was using my magic sight, so I could even see the little touch John had added. He'd carved a heart on the base of the handle and put SF plus LRM forever. Aww. The LRM threw me for a moment. Then I remembered John's birth name was Lane Rankin McRae. Anyway, the shillelagh was fantastic and almost on par with the craftsman. It still wasn't perfect though. That might have been because Sandy was working from a miniature charm, and something that small can only hold a certain amount of detail. It also could be that Sandy's magic worked best at a large scale, and at a micro level she was a bit fuzzy. Regardless, it was still a great weapon to fight with. Sandy gave it a critical look, decided it would work, and moved it to her left hand. Then she slowly summoned another shillelagh for her right hand. Ken was already done summoning his staff and personal shield, but he waited patiently until Sandy finished. This whole polite fighting thing was a bit strange, but it was really working out for Sandy. She got to experiment with casting through a rune, and now her opponent was giving her enough time to get her weapons ready. A real fight would have been far too fast-paced to allow for any of that. Ken seemed very surprised at how slow Sandy was at forming her weapon. I heard a few murmurs from his students too. How slowly. I heard a few murmurs from his students too. That would usually indicate that she had a very slow flow from the fireball and Sandy. Ken seemed very surprised at how slowly Sandy was. How slow? Well, I guess it's slow. I'm sorry. Ken seemed very surprised at how slow Sandy was at forming her weapon. I heard a few murmurs from his students too. That would usually indicate that she had a very slow flow. From the fireball and the force bolt, he knew that wasn't the case. Since he wouldn't know that she'd just put her first weapon together this morning, I'm sure he found the whole thing confusing. Once they were ready, they started attacking each other. The first moves were slow and careful, trying to get a feel for what the other person was capable of. Then they started picking up the pace. It soon became clear why Ken was ranked so highly. He was really good with the staff. His attacks were smooth, fast, and powerful. He worked all the angles too, striking at her feet, her head, and coming in from the sides. Sandy had her hands full. Fortunately, she wasn't a novice at stick fighting. She kept her defense together and managed to block almost everything he threw at her. Her shield charm still had juice, so it stopped anything she couldn't. They danced all around the ring, and this was Ken's time to shine. He looked confident, capable, and very much in his element. Sandy looked like she was struggling. Her defense was a reaction to what he was doing, and there wasn't any point where she went on the offensive. Or that's what a regular mage would see. I could see much better than that. And even on defense, Sandy's shillelaghs were wearing him down. Every clash between them knocked a tiny bit of magic out of her weapon and a whole lot more magic out of his. It looked fantastic as his staff showered sparks as he crashed into her weapons. All that was wasted magic, though, and soon Ken started to feel it. Sandy's shillelaghs were just too good for his staff, and I could see the tempo of the fight change as he actively tried to avoid them. He started moving faster, trying to get a strike on her shield before her weapons arrived to block. He also started working the edges more, targeting her feet, legs, and elbows. He even got risky and tried targeting her hands. Sandy, for the first time, got in a bit of offense, but she didn't try to strike him. Instead, she tried to hit his staff. Ken poured more magic into his weapon, but he didn't have the detail to hold it, so the sparks just got worse. Then he tried to condense his magic and shrink his staff by a few inches on each end. That sort of helped, but now he had less reach, giving Sandy even more opportunity to go on the offensive. The tempo of the fight changed again as he started giving her obvious openings for her to strike. I guess he was hoping that she would attack too hard and leave herself wide open for a counterattack, but that didn't happen. Instead, Sandy attacked methodically and ground down his defense. She hit him everywhere she could, his staff, his hands, his arm. She even whacked his leg one time when he tried to sneak in a kick. He started getting more and more desperate, and then the fight really shifted. Ken stayed in one spot too long, trying to figure out how to handle her. She hooked both ends of his staff with the crooks of her shillelagh and ripped it right out of his hands. He looked shocked as all the magic he'd invested in his weapon dissipated into the air. Now he was weaponless, and Sandy didn't give him time to summon another one. Instead, she kicked it into high gear and really started hammering him. He ran around the ring, trying to get away and gain some breathing room, but she chased him, hammering on his personal shield the whole time. The ending was inevitable, and it wasn't long before his shield fell with a loud pop. "Yield!" Ken hollered as he dropped to the ground, tapping the mat. And just like that, the match was over. Sandy stopped, backed up, and then unsummoned her weapons. She gave him a bow, gave his students a bow, and then turned and gave us a big grin. House Louisville, despite only having 4 people, had taken every bout. John, who they thought was the main person they would face, had only stepped into the ring as a second. If they'd been wondering if their loss in battle had been a fluke, we'd given them their answer. John swept Sandy up in his arms, twirling her around, and gave her a big kiss. Ken didn't get that treatment, but he did have several students run into the ring and help him to his feet. Annabeth, Tyler, and I gave Sandy a big congratulatory hug too, and we talked for a few minutes about her shillelagh and how they felt. Now that Tyler didn't have to appear neutral anymore, I got my own hug and kiss. He offered to pick me up and twirl me too, but I said I was good. With all the fighting, however, I was fairly sure I'd collected some impurities. Maybe we could get our forge on and he could bang them out of me. He gave me another kiss as he assured me that watching me fight shirtless had made his forge plenty hot enough, and he would be sure to bang the heck out of me later. The event was basically over, but Ken brought it to a nice close with a short speech. He thanked us for our time and hoped this event had been beneficial to us also. He reiterated again that he hoped our 2 schools would grow closer together and begin to learn and grow from each other. He then offered the floor for Sandy for her to say a few words, but she said she'd rather leave them with something more than that. She'd need a few minutes, so why don't we all just enjoy the cold beer while she was gone? Everyone loved that idea, and the party started up again. Sandy grabbed John and took him with her, so this was a wonderful opportunity for the 3 of us remaining to mingle and get to know these people in a non-combat kind of way. I asked the house to play some background music, which helped to create a fun mood, and it wasn't long before we were being regaled with humorous stories. Oliver, their youngest mage and the first guy I'd fought, ended up being a great host, and he helped us meet everyone. It seemed like Sandy and John were gone a long time, but eventually they returned and Ken got everyone's attention again. Sandy said our house appreciated their thoughtfulness, and we had certainly gained experience from the event. She also hoped our two schools could learn and grow from each other, and to that end, she had a special gift for them. She presented a small jewelry box to Ken, and when he opened it, a tiny charm in the shape of an orchid rested inside. John had outdone himself with the details. The main part of the charm was made of white gold, and all the detail and edges of the petals were highlighted in yellow gold. It was valuable just as a piece of art, but when Ken picked it up and realized it was a healing charm, he almost dropped it. "Oh my goodness," he said reverently as he triggered the charm and then quickly turned it off again. "I felt you healing our people earlier, and I was blown away with how powerful you were. Now I know why. This charm is just amazing." Then he sadly put the charm back in the box and tried to give it back. "I can't accept this. It's just too valuable. This is a treasure like I haven't seen before. We have a few healing charms, of course, but nothing like this. When I held it, it was like I was holding sunshine." Sandy wouldn't take it back, so he opened the box and looked at it again. "And it's so beautiful, too. I can't believe how shiny it is. It's almost like it's brand new. And it has almost no charge at the moment," Sandy warned, "so you'll have to recharge it. I'm hopeful this will get your injured students back on their feet quickly." Their healer took the charm and started working with what little charge it had on the students still on the ground. Nobody mentioned we'd been the ones to knock them down in the first place, so I guess this whole reconciliation part of the event was working. Sandy also didn't mention that she'd just made the charm with John, so Annabeth and I didn't say anything about that either. Everyone loved the charm and how it felt, and they soon formed an impromptu charging circle to give it more juice. It wasn't long before all the mages were conscious and at least sitting up. Most of them put on a brave face and got to their feet like nothing had happened. They moved slowly and carefully, though, and they sat down often, so I knew they were feeling the effects of their battles. They held another charging circle and got even more people on their feet and ready to move. Finally, they held a third charging circle, and then Ken came over to Sandy to let her know they were ready to move on shortly. That was nice, as I had enjoyed the event, but it had really taken up almost the whole day. Since they were technically in the house, we couldn't leave them on their own. We were also acting as hosts, and we couldn't relax until we were all out of the space and on the buses again. Until they were all out of the space and on the buses again. "So what's next for your school?" Sandy asked. "Well, we were also going to have a reconciliation with the Louisville mages," Ken said, "but we aren't in any sort of shape to do that at the moment. I think we'll stay at a hotel for a few days, enjoy the city, and recover before we attempt anything like that." We all looked at him in horror, so he stopped. What's the matter?" he asked. Sandy filled him in on the situation with the whole rotten mages thing, explaining that neither him nor his school should have anything to do with them. Ken looked shocked at the tale we were telling him, and I'm not sure he entirely believed us. Maybe he thought we were just spreading bad stories about our rivals. Regardless, we urged him to either not do it entirely or proceed with extreme caution. He promised to think about it very carefully. Sandy told him about her friend Jennifer and what Isabel had said about draining her of her magic. She got really upset remembering the whole thing and had to walk away and recompose herself. John went with her. While they were gone, Annabeth and I told him our story about seeing Carl and Marius destroy Cassandra in the alley behind our house. Ken agreed that was terrible, but he still didn't really seem to get it. Tyler could see we were getting frustrated too, so he changed the topic and asked what their next big event was. Ken looked visibly relieved to talk about something else, and he became excited about a tournament that was coming up. It was a teams tournament for mages that were under 50 years old. As over half of his school fit that criteria, he was eager to participate and see if they could win any prizes. "There are basically two types of tournaments," Ken said in his teacher's voice. "One type of tournament is for profit. Everyone who enters pays a hefty fee, and all the prize money goes to the top 1% of the finishers. This is a great format if you have pearls to burn and you're very confident in your skills. The other type of tournament is for promotion, and it usually has sponsors that kick in a lot of additional prizes. These tournaments are cheaper to enter, and the prizes go to a broader range of finishers. They also give prizes to the schools of the finishers too, which is extra nice. The MMTL is the second type of tournament, and it's the biggest one by a large margin. Seeing our blank looks, he clarified a bit more. The MMTL is the Midwest Magica Tourneur League. Their junior division happens every 5 years, and we already have a team that's qualified at the Cincinnati Satellite Tournament. Our school may enter a second team, though, as we have enough mages, and some of them are really good. Annabeth sounded interested and asked lots of questions. It seemed like the Magica Tourneur League was set up a lot like the World Series of Poker tournaments. Tournaments were held at the city level, and it gave teams a chance to practice their skills, earn a few prizes, and gain a paid entrance into the next level of competition. After that, there was the Midwest competition, which included 11 states from North Dakota to Ohio, including Kentucky. If the team did well there, they got free entrance into the national tournament and then into the world tournament. Any team could enter into the competition at any level, but it became much more expensive, and the competition got a lot harder as the levels went up. It was much better to enter at the city level and win your way up. Prizes at the city level were nice, but nothing special. Prizes at the regional level were fantastic, and that's what drew all the up-and-coming supernaturals like gay boys to glitter. First place had prizes worth 2 million pearls for the winner and another 1,000,000 pearls for their school. Ken didn't think they had any hope of placing first, but even the lower level prizes were still nice. He would be perfectly happy bringing home 100 pearls for the school and 200 pearls to split between the winning team. He seemed so hopeful over that amount. I wondered what he would think of winning over 600,000 pearls. It wasn't long before Sandy and John came back. She looked composed and ready to play host again. They got the last mage, Jeff, back on his feet and half carried him out to the park. There was a general rush to the restrooms to get a last tinkle in, but we eventually got the stragglers out and closed the door behind us. When we did, the door sank into the ground. Aggie and the cats were still inside, but they went wherever they wished, so I wasn't worried about them. We followed the school across the park, make sure they got on their buses, and gave them lots of happy waves goodbye as they headed out. They weren't gone that far as they were staying at one of the downtown. They weren't going that far as they were staying at one of the downtown hotels. Finally, it was just us again, and we were mostly quiet as we walked home. This had been a long day. I was starving as I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I was glad Sandy hadn't brought any snacks into the neutral gym, though. If Ken's school had gotten food, they might have stayed even longer. When we arrived back at the house, Annabeth noticed the new door for the first time. It had to be our new transfer room, as the door had a logo of an arrow with a circle around it. We all wanted to check it out, so she opened the door and we went inside. I don't know what I was expecting, but there wasn't all that much to it. There was a waiting room with comfortable chairs and tables and, a few pieces of art. It felt like I was in the reception area for a successful investment firm. There were 3 more doors in the room. The first said arrivals and had a green arrow pointing down. The second one said departures and had a green arrow pointing up. I opened them to check it out, but they each just had an empty room behind them. The third door had a box symbol and opened into a modestly sized room with shelving. Most importantly, it had 2 large boxes in it, one addressed to me and one to Sandy. Annelle's clothes had arrived. Annabeth wanted to see what we'd gotten, but she seemed hungry and tired, so I invited everyone up to my place for sandwiches. That got some curious looks, as my kitchen was usually the least stocked out of everyone's. I promised her the sandwich of her dreams, and then refused to say any more about it. Tyler backed me up and said she might be able to make the best sandwich she'd ever eaten. Like, ever. That really got everyone's attention. Sandy said she didn't feel like making a full meal at the moment, so she was ready for something quick and easy, too. The boxes were pretty big, so Tyler grabbed mine and John grabbed Sandy's, and we headed out. We dropped Sandy's box off at her place, and then we all headed up to my apartment. As soon as we walked into my greeting room, Sandy and Annabeth gasped and looked around in awe. "Jason, is this your new living room?" Annabeth asked. "I thought we were going to work on it together." She sounded slightly disappointed. "It looks beautiful, though," she added quickly. I told her about getting up this morning, and discovering the house already changed everything for me. I had forgotten the house was still set up to make whatever changes it wanted. John thought the greeting room was nice, but he got really excited with my theater room. We all climbed on the giant sofa and watched a few clips on YouTube. Normally, showing a regular resolution video on a screen this big would have made it seem very pixelated and grainy. However, my new system took care of all that, and it still seemed like we were looking through a window as all the events unfolded. I'd never had a curved screen before, but the difference was huge. I guess once you go curved, you never go back. That sounded a bit naughty, and I chuckled internally. Then I caught John giving Sandy a saucy look as his hand caressed the back of my couch. "Oh, hell no!" I squeezed Tyler's shoulder and pointed with my eyes when he looked at me. He quickly took it in, then whispered indignantly, "Oh, no, they don't. We're breaking in this couch before anybody else." "For sure," I agreed softly, "and we're going to break it in good." "You know," he purred, giving me a look that set my naughty bits on fire. Suddenly I wanted everyone to leave. "Now." "Oh, you know it," he purred. Suddenly I wanted everyone to leave. "Now." Tyler knew the effect he was having on me, so he snuggled in close and gave my cheek a demure kiss. Then he started playing with my nipple and set me on fire all over again. I quickly grabbed his hand, interlocked our fingers, and held it firmly. We had friends over, and we were all still hungry. Hanky-panky would have to wait. The clip ended, and I raised the lights. "It's time to eat," I hollered. Annabeth and Sandy cheered and crawled out of the middle of the sofa. John was much more reluctant to leave, as I think he could have stayed here and watched movies for hours. Tyler gave a happy look at my crotch, where he could clearly see the effect he was having on me. Then he hopped over the side of the couch, but not before he slipped and accidentally rubbed his package on my face. Oh my God, my boyfriend is a tease. I followed him much more slowly, trying to keep the one-eyed monster tucked and presentable, when all it wanted to do was stand up and roar. There are times when being well hung was just not an advantage. I made it through, though, and when I looked up, John was giving me a knowing grin. Then he winked at Tyler, who winked back. Sandy caught the end of the exchange as she looked at Tyler, then me, then smacked John's arm on general principle. Annabeth seemed oblivious to everything, as she was on the hunt for food. My friends were just as amazed and blown away by my kitchen as I'd been. Annabeth was completely stunned by all the sandwich possibilities, but she got over her amazement pretty quickly and started making a monster sandwich. She layered on meats and cheeses and then lightly toasted it in my smallest oven. After that, she added mayo and some type of mustard and took a bite. The rapture on her face said it all. If this wasn't the best sandwich ever, it came pretty close. John zoomed into the beers, and it wasn't long before he'd identified a good dozen he wanted to try. He was already tasting the first one when he saw the pizzas in the refrigerator, and his eyes lit up. Sandy was just floored. There were so many choices and so much stuff, she was frozen with indecision. She just walked around in wonder, touching the packaging and explaining at how amazing it all was. I walked up beside her and put my arm around her. "You know what the best part of all this is?" I asked. She just shook her head. "It replenishes automatically," I said happily. "No more grocery shopping. Unless I want to, of course. But I can eat anything here, and when I need it, it's already replenished and ready to go." I thought Sandy was going to cry at the wonder of it all. Instead, she gave me a giant hug, picked me up like she was John, and spun me around. I just laughed as I quickly turned off my magic sight. All that spinning would make me throw up. And right now, I wanted to eat. She quickly set me down as she saw John with the pizza and realized he had no clue what he was doing. I turned on my magic sight again and had a seat at the counter as Sandy took over my kitchen. I didn't mind at all. Sandy was the master in the kitchen and she loved being there. If she could take my snacker-type kitchen to the next level, then she was more than welcome to do so. Sandy took the basic pizza, added more cheese and another round of toppings, and popped it into the largest oven. We couldn't wait that long, so she started taking sandwich orders and toasting them in the smaller oven. Crisp, warm bread and slightly melted cheese made them a whole other kind of delicious. I had a beer with the boys, and then Annabeth found the wine. She picked out a white she said she wanted to try, so I had a glass with the girls. It was delicious, so we opened another bottle and sampled that one too. The pizza was ready, so we all chowed down, and it was gone in less than 5 minutes. Fortunately, Sandy already had the next one ready to go, and it was baking while we were eating. We were all sitting at the counter on the stools, and Sandy was behind the counter doing her thing. She was a joy to watch, but I saw John watching her with a special look in his eye. He looked proud of his wife and fond of who she was for him, and madly and deeply in love with her. I tried to put my arm around his massive shoulders, but instead ended up hugging his big arm. "You caught yourself a fine woman," I told him. "Aye, Jason, that I did," he rumbled. "I'm a lucky, lucky man." Sandy looked up, gave us both a beautiful smile filled with happiness, and continued doing what she was doing. "I'm so happy, I could kiss you," John said dreamily. "Go ahead," Tyler said in a double dog dare you kind of voice. They shared a look like, "Don't think I won't," followed by, "Let's do it then," followed by Sandy smirking and rolling her eyes. That's how I got kissed by John, full-on llama kissed. I'm not gonna lie, it was a heavenly experience. Somehow we ended up on the floor, and somehow my shirt got pulled up. I knew what was coming next, and I was already screaming, "No!" as Tyler jumped on me to hold me down. Then John blew raspberries all over my belly while his fingers tickled my sides. I shrieked and hollered like crazy, but it was no use. The two hottest men in the world held me down and had their way with me. I was so ticklish I hiccuped and snorted. I may even have peed a little. It felt like I was 5 years old again, and these were my big brothers. The love was real. Annabeth and Sandy just watched and drank wine. I'm sure we amused them to no end. Once the next pizza was ready, Tyler and John rushed to grab a slice and left me breathless on the floor. Finally, I got up and sat by Annabeth, who gave me a kind hug and then poured me another glass of wine. Then they had moved on from white and were into reds now. This was already a great evening, and it got even better from there. We switched from serious food to snacking foods, like popcorn and ice cream sundaes, and moved on to the gaming part of the space. Annabeth screamed when she saw Pac-Man and ran over right away to have a game. John screamed just as loud when he saw Spy Hunter, and it wasn't long before he was driving his car down the road, shooting the cars in front and throwing out oil slicks for the baddies behind. One thing I'd noticed through all this was that Tyler and I had been showing off the kitchen together. It was like it was our kitchen and we were the hosts. I like that. I like that a lot. Before the night went on too much further, I really wanted to put my box of clothes away, so I told everyone I would be back. Tyler came with me, but Tyler came with me, but I don't think we were going to be missed at all. Everyone was deep into the arcade games, and I wasn't even sure they knew we'd left. We took the box into the walk-in closet, and the house had already provided a mannequin right inside the front entrance. We opened the box, took out the brown tuxedo and short shorts, and dressed it up. Then we took out the beautiful cape of beads I'd been honored with and set it over the top. It was so frickin' pretty, and the detail work was just insane. Tyler whistled in admiration and took a few minutes to just take it all in. "You told me the story, but it just doesn't do justice," Tyler said reverently. "This is a work of art." "And now I get to admire it every time I come in here," I agreed. Next, we pulled out the sapphire blue and emerald green suit. Tyler loved that too. He wanted me to try it on, but I was feeling a little sweaty and icky from all the fighting, so I told him I'd model it for him later. After that, we hung up the frilly purple outfit I'd worn to the old-time dance. That seemed like such a long time ago, but I remembered how it felt to wear the jacket and how slim and strong it made me look. There was one more outfit, but it wasn't from NL. It was the nice pants and shirt the Grand Matron had provided before our talk with her. They were nice, but they didn't have the memories like NL's clothes did. I felt like there should have been more, but the outfit NL had made for Sandy's discussion hadn't survived the fight with Eugene. When we'd gone to the tournament and the fair, I'd just worn regular clothes, and NL hadn't made any special outfits for those nights. Still, 3 custom looks was a lot. I checked on my request from earlier, and it looked like the house had come through for me. I now had a selection of shirts, shorts, underwear, and pants in different colors. Tyler asked if I wanted to take a quick shower, but I was pretty sure a shower with Tyler wouldn't be quick at all. My heat-seeking missile had its one eye on Tyler, and if I turned it loose, it was going to explode. Since we had guests, I reluctantly turned them down. We went back to my new entertainment area, and the party got into full swing. We started playing a game of darts, where a person who threw a bullseye got to hand out shots. We all cheated outrageously, but it didn't matter as John made us some killer rum shots with lime and pineapple juice. Yummy. We threw from clear across the room, and almost everyone made bullseyes anyway. My surfer dudes helped me out. Sandy and Annabeth used magic, and John and Tyler were just that good. Tyler talked about playing darts when he was a kid, so that meant he'd been throwing for 300 years. No wonder he was amazing at it. Tyler talked about our time with the jigsaw puzzle from earlier, and that really intrigued Annabeth. She decided to start a puzzle, and we all joined her. This time we did a 2,000-piece puzzle, which gave everyone plenty of time to experiment with their magic. Aggie joined us on a stand, and we all took a moment to toast his arrival and celebrate his flowers. Bermuda and Mr. Tubbles rolled in on their mobile beds, and then were height adjusted so they could see all the pieces. Sandy thought that was the neatest thing, and Annabelle laughed so hard she just about fell over in her chair. "You're so wasted," I laughed at her. Then I realized I was laughing way too much myself and was about ready to fall out of my own chair. Wow, those shots were powerful. John handed me a beer to help clear my head, and I was so far gone, I thought this sounded like a good idea. The good news was that my magic was wide open, and I was seeing puzzle matches faster than I could put them together. I could see, hear, and feel the matches clearly. I even started to notice that some of the pieces had a smell relating to which area of the puzzle they went to. It was fantastic. The same thing was happening with Annabeth. She wasn't getting all the senses like I was, but she could hear much better, and she was putting her side together quickly. Sandy substituted my beer for fruit juice, and soon I'd recovered enough that I wasn't going to fall out of my chair anymore. It took a few hours to finish the puzzle, and we all had a wonderful time. Annabeth was getting her second win, and John and Sandy were still going strong. Tyler said they were welcome to stay, play games, and eat as much as they wanted. They just needed to make sure everyone got home all right. John assured Tyler that he would make sure everyone was safe. So Tyler slung me over his shoulder in a fireman's carry and whisked me off to the bedroom. I let him undress me and then caress my bare skin. I was too tipsy to do anything more, so I just put my arms around his neck and let him touch me wherever he wanted. My one-eyed Willie was completely undeterred by all the alcohol in my system, and he was ready to tango. Tyler finally lifted me into bed and then settled on top of me. We made sloppy love, and it was just wonderful. This time, it wasn't about technique or having a great moment. Instead, we just enjoyed melding with each other. We celebrated the way our bodies fit together, the way our tongues danced, the way we touched. I told him he felt like warm bread, and we laughed that we were making pizza as his hips started kneading me. I was in a loving space, and my magic was wide open as I started experiencing him on all levels, just like I had the jigsaw puzzle. I tasted his magic. I heard its lusty cry. I felt it caress me, and I smelled his lavender scent. Somehow I owned him, and I let him own me. And I felt his passion rising up in all the usual places. But this time I spread it out a bit. I took some of it for myself and felt a warm urgency spreading through my body. I took his urgency and pushed it throughout him too. He gasped and his eyes got wide, but he kept his steady, slow love rhythm going. I felt his need and mine growing at the same time. Feeling his need and mine growing at the same time was fascinating and wonderful beyond measure. I kept robbing it of its big moment. Instead, I spread the love around, and Tyler started helping. Soon we were both moaning like a preacher's daughter in a haystack. But still, we didn't come. Tyler slowed down so he was barely moving, but our whole bodies were so sensitive, and the sensation kept building. I became hyper-aware of him, how every muscle felt, how warm his breath was on my neck, how powerful he felt inside me. When the dam broke, it was juicy and wonderful and heavenly. I shook over and over and over again. I cried my love to the heavens, and I didn't care. I wanted more, and Tyler gave me more. We came again, and then for some reason, I wanted to take a shower. I was still a little unsteady on my feet, so Tyler came along to help me. And by help me, I mean he took me in my massive walk-through shower. Getting clean never felt so good. After that, we cuddled under the running water for the longest time. Somewhere in there, Tyler added soap to the mix and then toweled me dry. I felt clean and satisfied in the best way possible. He carried me back to bed, and we curled up together. Bermuda hopped up on the bed and settled down on my pillow. Mr. Tubbles hopped up and then settled down with Tyler. All was right in the world. I was warm, snuggly, and happy. I rubbed Bermuda's belly for as long as I could keep my eyes open. "I love you, baby," I told him, and he leaned over and licked my face. My giant fan rotated slowly. Its breeze caressed my skin. I heard the waves on the beach outside my window. Tyler kissed the back of my neck. His arm around me flexed, pulling me in even closer against his naked body. Bermuda started grooming. His rhythmic licks gently rocked the pillow. My last thought was one of gratitude as I gently fell asleep. And that ends our chapter. So I hope you really enjoyed it, really liked it. Did not end on a cliffhanger this time, so that's really great. Okay, so if you're watching the second or third time or something, just go ahead and turn it off. That's it. Let's see. Okay, so coming up, this is the start of the the moments. It's gonna rush through to the end of the book from this point. And the next chapter is going to end on the cliffhanger, the biggest cliffhanger of the whole book that I have ever, like, I've been pushing for this moment for forever. So I'm very excited for you guys to experience the next chapter. I hope you really enjoy it. And I hope that makes you very excited for the remainder of the book. So at this point I'm writing, we're in that situation, and when we're in that situation I wanted two things to happen. I've got one of them written, I'm writing the second one, and then we're headed into the big finale. So oh wow, it's exciting. Okay, so a couple things from this particular chapter that I pulled from real life. One of them is, we actually do have a curved screen TV. They were all the rage for a good while, and we went to Sam's, and when we were in there, they had the exact same TV by Samsung, both right next to each other. One was flat, one was curved, and the flat one looked like you were looking at a picture, and the curved one looked like you were looking through a window. I couldn't believe the difference between them. And I know some people love them, some people don't, and it all depends on how far away you're from the TV or whatever. But we have just fallen in love with our curved TV and had it for years. So anyway, so I had to include a curved TV, of course, in his room. The other thing is the shillelagh. My grandfather, who I don't know necessarily very much, we grew up in America and they're over in Ireland. So my grandfather actually has my dad has a shillelagh from my grandfather. And apparently my grandfather was, I guess, like he was in World War II and had a very bad experience. His ship got capsized. He was one of the very few survivors, and he actually fought on the side of the Russians for a while because they were the ones that rescued him from the water. And he actually finished the war from there, and they met in Germany, and then he ended up coming home back to England again. There's actually a book called Last Days of the HMS Edinburgh, I believe that was the title. And anyway, it's an account from one of the survivors of the ship going down. Anyway, before that, he had a bunch of jobs, and one of the jobs that he had was apparently he was like the equivalent of a beat cop. But I guess over there at the time they had like a volunteer force, like the volunteer fire department, and so he actually had a shillelagh as his night weapon of choice to do his rounds. And my dad has that shillelagh, and he gave it to me when I was a kid, so I loved the shillelagh. So it was very cool. I didn't get to keep it for very long because I was swinging it around way too much and I broke something, and after that, nope. I wasn't very old when I got it. They probably should never given it to me, but oh well, there you go. So anyway, now I had the opportunity here. That's why I'm very excited to actually include a shillelagh in my book, because Dad still got it at his house. So at some point I want to get my hands on that thing, and that will be coming home to me. So I would just love to do that. Maybe do something special and hang it on the wall or give it a special place, because I have fond memories of that. And then the other thing, the last thing from real life that happened was I had a accident with fireworks and burned off my hair. This was, I think I was still in college at the time. Yeah. Anyway, so there was me, there was my brother-in-law Dave, and then there was his friend Joe. Joe was really skinny, and he got us into so much trouble. I mean, it was incredible. Anyway, so what happened was we had some of the mortars. I don't know where in the world Joe got these silly things, but they're probably illegal in the US. But anyway, so he got these mortars, and it was well after the 4th of July, and we all decided that we were going to go out and set these mortars off at the apartment complex that Joe was at the moment. Bad idea. So we get out there and we light the first one. It goes and stops, doesn't fire. So we light the second one, nothing. We light the third one, nothing. So we go in and we're feeling kind of, you know, big moment, supposed to be this amazing thing, all this stuff. Supposed to happen, didn't. So anyway, we had a paper bag. So Joe decides he's going to saw one of these mortars in half, dump all the thing in there, and set the paper bag on fire. So he's got a paper bag, and it's got one of the flat bottoms to it. So he opens up the bag, puts it upside down, gets the mortar open, which that was harder than what you would think, and then pours the deal in. So then we go outside, find a little stone slab, light the bottom, and it goes, the flames rise, and all of a sudden, poof. I mean, we had so much smoke, it looked like we had let off a nuclear bomb. Like, it was intense. We loved it. So we go back inside and we decide we're going to put 2 mortars together. But we don't have another paper bag quite like that. Instead, we have a paper bag that's one of those ones where it's just got one little seam at the bottom. So we poured 2 mortars worth of gunpowder into this thing, right? Well, we go out there and we try and set the one end on fire. And I guess the bag is flame resistant. It just will not catch fire. And we're like trying to gradually losing our safety aspect to this whole thing. So then I'm trying to change the bag a little bit so it will work, and I'm leaned over the bag. Joe's leaned over the bag, and dumbass Joe goes and lights the part of the bottom because he thought he tapped all the thing. Well, if you tap it, you don't get all the gunpowder down in the end. There's still some of it there. So anyway, whew, flames like just engulf me and him. And my brother-in-law, Dave, like, he is laughing so hard he falls over and he can't stop laughing. Like, oh my God, my mom was so mad, so mad. So it ruins my glasses, of course, and lost my eyebrows, lost like the whole front of my hair. Oh my God, it was something. It was something. So anyway, so the part on this chapter where Sandy fries Ken and then Ken loses his hair, that was pulled from real life. So anyway, all right. So I hope you guys have little tidbits if you're interested. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Take care.